Hi, everybody. It's Lynne McTaggart.
I'm Bryan Hubbard.
And we are here to talk to you about healing your past and designing your future through the power of intention and the power of time light. So we have both together and separately been working on two modalities that are radical ways and quick ways to deal with the kinds of traumas that hold you back and how healing those can help you design a future. So we wanted to share a few tips with you and a few ideas about how we're doing it and the kinds of workshops and intensives that we do to teach this and to help you. So I want to talk to you at first about and let Bryan talk to you about his time light project and the whole time light theory that he's developed that is now being used by a team of European psychiatrists very successfully. So, well, Bryan Hubbard, please explain yourself.
Oh, right. Thanks, Lynn, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I think everyone knows about intention. Those of you who followed Lynn's work know very well the incredible power that it does have. And it's, I suppose, the power of a conscious thought. And the problem is most of our thoughts are not conscious. And this really was the starting point for my therapy, Time Light, which grew out of a long period of chronic depression, which I went through for the best part of 10 years, until I had an extraordinary revelation. And essentially what that revelation is, I think, will radicalize therapy, psychotherapy, psychology, and I think even into the world of physics. I think it's that important. And it's simply this, and it's that the past is an energy, and it's alive and it's well in every one of us right now. Now, what's that got to do with intention? Well, the past is living through us right now and thinking us, if you like. And until we come to realize that, we cannot say that we're fully conscious beings. And I think the sort of the big overarching theme of our work together as we go forward is just that we must become conscious beings, because we are clearly at a radical crisis. Where we're seeing on the world stage our own personal freedoms and civil liberties being taken away from us. And on a bigger stage than that, the global stage of climate change, of global warming. And these are enormous crises, and I think they can only be resolved by a conscious person, by conscious beings. And Lynn's work has shown us what the enormous power of being a conscious group can do, the extraordinary changes we can make. But our new venture, the work we're looking to develop right now, that's wonderful, but what about the other 23 hours and 45 minutes that we live where we are not living consciously? And my discovery about the nature of time and psychological time in particular, I think is so important, if I may say so. It's for you to judge, but I believe it is critical in our understanding of ourselves, what thought is, and how that shapes our future. Because as conscious beings, we can shape our future. As unconscious beings, our future is shaped for us, and it's shaped by the past. And we have that choice to make. Will we become conscious and therefore live as fully present beings, or will we continue as unconscious beings, in which case we will be lived through by the past? I suppose in a nutshell, and a complicated one, that's what Time Light is.
Absolutely. And also, by the way, Bryan is the author of a book on the subject called The Untrue Story of You. And as I say, the Time Light therapy is now being used in Europe by a team of very experienced psychiatrists who are using it on patients who have not been able to get well through other means, and they're having great success with it. So that segues into my work, which is all about the fact that the new science shows that time is not a forward-going arrow. It's one great big smeared out now. And scientists recently discovered this when they found that, for instance, the brain can't distinguish between a memory and a future event. It's located in the same place. So the brain gets that, and scientific evidence gets it. When we start looking at evidence for a whole bunch of things, from dreaming to remote viewing to sending psychic information, we find that we have extraordinary capabilities that transcend time, that we have the ability to pick up information at any point in time or space, that we are forecasting our future all the time, that we are picking up information from the past. But as Bryan says, one of the real issues is essentially a thought is a frequency, it's an energy that stays in the body. So one of the things that I've been experimenting with now for many years successfully is using intention to erase those memories in the past. So what I have found when I teach certain techniques to my students, that if it is a health issue, a relationship issue, an early trauma, a situation that happened last week with their partner or loved one or spouse or child, they can heal the energy that is trapped inside them through the power of what I like to call time travel intention. So going to that place and changing the energy. Now, there are a variety of techniques that we can do with that, but it really works. And then when I combine that with Bryan's exercises and people's understanding that the thought thinks the thinker, which is basically his koan about this, then they understand that this energy can be changed. And we also find that once we do things like that, once we start clearing some of the past, we can also use intention to travel forward. Remember, the brain can't distinguish between present, past, or future. And we can use the power of group intention to create and design a future that is more likely to come true. One of the interesting elements that we find that is really central to our work is the whole idea of getting off of yourself, altruism. There's been work in Japan demonstrating that when you try mapping out the future of someone else, it is more likely to come true for them and for you. It's all about bringing in altruism. So that's also a centerpiece of our work too. But it's remarkable, isn't it, the kinds of things that we've seen in some of our workshops and retreats, the amount of trauma and abuse and things coming forward. Do you want to speak about that,
Yes,
Bryan?
I certainly can. I mean, the first thing to get is that time is not a dimension, it's an energy. And we live in various time sequences at the same time. And the most obvious one is present time, which is what we're all experiencing right now. But the bit that interests me much more, and did because of my depression, was past energy. And that is the energy of emotion, which is the result of trauma, upset, whatever it might be, essentially what is an incomplete experience because the trauma got trapped. We did not complete that experience. And it has very profound effects on us. And studies have demonstrated now that, for example, if you have what they call an adverse event as a child, you're much more likely to suffer chronic disease as an adult. So I think it's something like, I think they mapped out about 17 adverse reactions. This is what Lynne is referring to at our workshops, because I will often read the 17 out to people and ask them to raise their hands. Did this happen to you? And it's actually heartbreaking, isn't it, Lynne? How many times people put up their hands and quite serious levels of childhood trauma, including sexual assault and goodness knows what else. But this determines your life. And we don't recognize that it does, but it does it at a level that's far more profound than you could imagine. And our work is really trying to explain this to you, to uncover this very gently, so that you become conscious of this energy flow that is determining your life. And, you know, one clue is the amount of patterns that appear in your life. For example, constant money worries, relationship problems, whatever. That is a past energy that's trapped, which is creating patterns in the present. And this is the sort of stuff we work on with Lynne as well, with her retroactive intention, which I think you should talk about a little bit, Lynne. Such a powerful tool that we employ to help people. And some of the stories are quite amazing that happen in front of us at our workshops. But then tell them a bit about that.
Sure. What I've found is one of the most significant aspects of a trauma, the thing that really burns it inside you and keeps that energy trapped, is a sense of powerlessness. We don't have power when we have a teacher who tells us we're stupid, or a parent who slaps us or abuses us. We don't have power when we are, constantly belittled by a spouse, or when, we have some sort of healing crisis. That's still a sense of powerlessness. That's the overriding emotion. So my method of retro intention isn't changing what happened. It's changing how you responded to what happened. And that really means your emotional response. So that's some of the work that we go into, is how to take back your power by essentially reliving that situation, but with a more powerful response. And I have found that is extraordinary back in time. And that whole idea is also powerful going forward too. But we've had amazing success with it. Most people who take my courses say that this is one of the most powerful techniques they've learned from me. We had a woman who had vitiligo. I had her go back to the moment that she first had the infection that ended up leading to her losing pigmentation. And her skin literally started repigmenting right there in front of us. It was bizarre and wonderful. We've had people with every kind of trauma, including, as Brian says, in our workshops, it's heartbreaking to see when we say, did you ever have sexual relationships with your parents? Hands go up. And we're just shocked, and it's painful. And yet we also find the freeing of this kind of lifelong trauma through the power of retro intention and the power of combining our work. So that's one of the things that we find is most successful.
But but to understand that, it's also important to understand the framework. And this is where my work comes in, where I explain the different time modalities which we are always living in. They're not exactly difficult to understand, present time, which we get, but it is much more profound than just saying we're living now. It is everything in the universe. It, in present time, creates the universe. It creates time and space, where everything takes place. It's where the drama of life unfolds, your life unfolds. No great secret there. But what's driving that? Well, what's driving that is really how conscious you are. And if you're not very conscious, your psychological past is driving that. So whether it is the trauma of childhood or whatever it might be, will be driving that into the present, is the energy that makes whatever happens in your present happen. Now, what makes this so potent is the third center you have, which I call the potential, which is outside of time and space. But whatever happens in the potential is interpreted, is brought into life, if you like, in the present. And that's for good or for bad. It's not a moral energy, it's amoral. It doesn't care whatever you are, whatever the energy is dominating in your life will then appear in the present, courtesy of the creative power of the potential center. So it is important to understand that framework, which I came to understand, as I said, as a result of my depression. But it is important to understand that, so that then you can begin to piece together the work that I do, the work that Lynne does, and then understand its significance. And you understand, well, why am I doing this? And you'll understand then exactly why, in fact, you are. And retro intention is a really powerful tool. I've developed 21 myself, and our work does seem to, there's a symbiotic relationship to our work, which probably is no enormous surprise, but it wasn't meant to be like that, but it has ended up being like that. And I think the two are hopefully help each other. They make the two even stronger. And and it's interesting, Lynne talks about empathy. She talks about, altruism. These are very important keys, as are forgiveness and as is gratitude. All these are very, very essential keys that you can use. But understanding within the framework of Time-Light, which is the name I give my therapy, my side of this, really makes a sense of the whole thing. You understand, now I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And you understand these different time models and how they interact with each other and how they're driving you. And, once you've got that, then the chances of becoming a conscious being, of having an extraordinary life where you are living your fullest potential, whatever that might be, is so much greater. So that possibility becomes so much greater. And that's ultimately what we do, going back to what we said earlier. Why? Because we must become conscious beings, especially now. It's so important.
Absolutely, Brian. And what you talked about with the potential center, one of the things that we do also in our workshops is move you into your ideal future. And one thing that's really important to understand about the future and the present is how interlinked they are. There's a fascinating study by the scientist, Dr. Dean Radin, who is the chief scientist for the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And he wanted to test how time works with a multi-stage little exercise he gave people. It was a computerized exercise. And he found, to his total astonishment, that the speed at which it took to do the second part of it, so there was a two-step process on a computer, the speed at which it took to do the second process influenced the speed at which you did the first one. So let me unpack that for a minute. What that really was talking about was that the future affected the present as it unfolds. The future affected the present as it unfolds. And that's a bizarre idea, because again, we're so imbued with the idea that time is a forward-going arrow. But what we've discovered is the future and the present are so interlinked. And when you design, and this is what we do with our intention groups, when the group designs your ideal future for you, we find that the present gets better almost immediately. So it's that interlinking of time that's so important for us to get away from the whole idea that we have, that we are, life is an arrow from cradle to grave. We have to move beyond that. We have to understand that we are accessing all information all at once. And so we can manipulate the past and by manipulate, I mean in a good way, manipulate the past, manipulate the future to our benefit and to the benefit of everyone, as Brian says, as a conscious being.
Yeah, extraordinarily, you're living in 3 time zones at the same moment. You are present, you are past, and you are this potential, all living together. But really, the point of our work is saying which one dominates, which of your time selves, if you like, is dominating. And that's really where we start looking at that, working with that. And it's, and then when we understand, it is, for most people, it is the psychological past self as it was for me with my depression, was my past self dominated. And as a result of that, suffered from depression. And it doesn't always manifest as depression, of course. All sorts of psychological issues arise. You can feel trapped, you can feel blocked, you can feel frightened, you can feel unloved, you can feel as if you're in a pattern over which you have no control, because actually you don't until you wake up. All these things are manifestations of that, which appear in the present, in your life right now. And it's only when you study this, it's like, creating a roadmap. And my work tries to do that for you. And then you say, oh, right, I can see how this is working. And that just makes it so much clearer, so much easier to then follow and then start working on that. And as Lynn says, I outlined it all in a book I did called The Untrue Story of You. And I suppose that is worth explaining. Why did you call it that? And the reason why is because every story we live by stories. All our life is a story from childhood, whatever happened to us, how our parents were, how our school teachers were, how our friends were, how our wife is, how our husband is, and so on. Is all a story, right? But it's all untrue. Why is it untrue? Because it's from your perspective. And that makes it untrue. Altruism, forgiveness, broadens that out into, hopefully, you get to a 360-degree circle. And when you get to a 360-degree circle, you're free. And that's really where we're trying to spread this circle out, right? Right now, you're probably narrow casting around about 45, 60 degrees. You widen it out, and then you see the story was untrue. Didn't mean say it didn't happen. It did happen, but it was untrue. Why was it untrue? Because it was your perspective only. And one of the freeing things for me also was, because I suffered as my father as a child. One of my freeing thoughts was understanding whatever he did the very best he could. And that was a freeing thought, because then my circle widened and I could see my father, inadequate as he was, that was the best he could do for all the things that he brought into the world, all the things that he had experienced as a kid. That's what he was bringing to the party. Not great, but that's the best he could do. And that was a freeing thought. And my circle of influence increased from 45 degrees to 60 degrees. Then you start seeing other players and you see the circumstances, and that circle widens again and again. As Lynn says, her work is a lot about altruism, intending for others. All these are very, very profound, and it's strong juice. It's strong juice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what becomes, a freeing thing.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, oh, isn't this a nice thing to do? We find that, the effects on the body and the brain immediately as being part of a group, and a group involved in an altruistic activity, demonstrates that all kinds of things happen physiologically that are extraordinarily healing. It turns on a thing called the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the brain and body that is involved with all of the major organs. And when this turns on, so does compassion, forgiveness, etc. And so part of our work, what's really central to it also, is the group effect, and getting people into a group, not only to do intention together, but also heal the past together, individuals' past together, design the future together, heal illnesses together. But all of that work together also heals the senders. And that's the thing that's, we find most remarkable. So we combine this work in workshops and retreats. This is our advanced work. And one of the things we have coming up, we hope, governments willing, COVID willing, is a retreat over New Year's. We called it Into the Light, because we felt we all need to essentially come back into the world, into the light. We've been looking forward to the end of this darkness, this tough time, this challenging moment in our history. And we want to bring people into the light. So we're hoping to do this workshop the 29th of December through January 4th. And we have some other things upcoming. We have in March, we'll be running a online workshop called Intention in and Out of Time. We'll be running it together, an advanced workshop. And we also have another retreat planned later in 2022 in Northern Italy at Damanhur, of all places. So again, COVID willing, hopefully we'll be doing this work in these different locations. So we have a number of people on here as well as on Facebook right now, and we'd love to take some of your questions now. Ask us anything. You can ask us anything, and I'll check the Q&A. You can write if you're on the webinar. You can write in the Q&A, ideally, or the chat, and also on Facebook. And our team will put it in our Q&A if you're writing on Facebook. Okay, we got Francine saying, I understand the concept experience of changing the response of the child in the past, but how does one visualize such alternative response? I.e., if a little child has been physically overtaken by an adult who is physically larger and stronger. Shall I answer that? Francine, what we tend to do in our workshops is you can't change physical things that happened. What you can change is your emotional response to it. You can change your feeling of powerlessness. So that's the kind of thing we work on. So it's your emotional response. We don't change what happened, we change your response to it. So whether that is talking back to the adult, whether that is talking to yourself afterward, making sure people can do things to you, but if they don't take away your power, you've won.
It's again saying things like, what you did to me was unacceptable, and I will not accept this. I will not have this shadow my life, and I'm free of that. And it's sort of phrases like, and so physical size doesn't matter. It's the power within you and you expressing it that is the key.
Absolutely. Now we've got somebody unnamed saying that you just talk about the group that makes your ideal self. How do you do that? Well, it's a process. It's a complex process. We can't go into detail now, but we can give you general ideas, which is the group actually maps out your future. And we find this allowing someone else to map out your ideal future. It's not ideal self, it's ideal future. Is a powerful way of transferring it to you. Essentially, I think this is probably because so many of us denigrate ourselves. We don't really believe in our own power. We're more likely to believe in somebody else's power. So if you have someone else do it for you, essentially it's more likely to actualize. And it's free of all of those comments, that internal narrative that you usually have saying, you can't do that, you'll never be able to do that, forget it, and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Right. TV says, why is it important to start new pages instead of writing everything together? Besides starting the work early in the day as possible, what's the best way to get results from working with the tools in your book? Oh, he's talking about he's read your book, and he's saying you have to do a new page every day in your exercises. So why do you have to start on a new page every day?
Well, simply because as it builds up, you need that continuation on that page. I mean, it really is, it doesn't mean you physically have to create a new page if you don't want to. If you bought yourself a 60-page notebook and you needed a 90-page notebook, carry on the page you're on. But it was really saying, you start a new page because it's a new day, but you'll see the continuation of those exercises, and that builds up and builds up and builds up. Yeah, it's not You don't have to, but it's just if you've got enough pages, it just is just better to do that.
Okay, and where's the retreat going to be, says Columba, on December 2021? It's going to be in Costa Rica. And we are planning it on December, it starts on the December 29th and runs for a week to January 4th. And we'll mix up, as we do in all our retreats, we have some, we have work in the morning, we meet and we go through our workshop in the morning, and then we give you free time in the afternoon. And we also plan celebrations, dinners, etc. And we keep the group small, because what tends to happen with these retreats is this is a tribe of like-minded people, and these people become friends for life. We've seen it over and over again. I mean, one of our last retreats before COVID, we had one group that consisted of people from Australia and the Middle East and Sri Lanka, the Far East group. And we tend to lump people together, and that becomes your group for the week. And two of the participants got married after that, and the entire group came to their wedding in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm. We do have COVID hovering at the moment, and we are mindful of that, and we're at the moment hoping this is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. As you know, the rules change so quickly, but if you'd like to find out more about it, you can find out more about our retreat, Costa Rica retreat, contacting the company that is organizing it, that is Global Journeys. And if you look at the link below, that'll be included in the chat on the webinar. It'll also be included on the Facebook Live. It's globalj.org. And if you go to /Lynne, LYNNE -3, you'll find out more about it. Okay, now, will there be any online access to any workshops on this, says Val?
You mean the Costa Rica streaming? I assume not.
I think the workshops they're talking about probably is our advanced course, Intention in and Out of Time.
Well, I probably the streaming of workshops won't happen, but what we are planning to do are our own online events, which will be separate from that. So in that regard, yes, we will be.
Yes, and if you'd like to find out more about that, Intention in and Out of Time, there is a wait list on it. You can sign up to find out more information when we announce it, which will be early in 2022. So if you go on my website, lynnmctaggart.com, and go to Intention in and Out of Time, you can find it. There'll also be a link either in the chat or on Facebook about it. Now, Maureen says, I'm currently processing through the changes from a Power of 8 intention. I try not to get too into the story. Like most mindfulness practitioners, I'm conscious of a lot of my thoughts. Today at yoga, I was engrossed in negative thoughts, then noticing them coming back to the breath. It was exhausting. Then noticing when coming back to the breath, it was exhausting. I feel the seed event is pre-verbal, so wondering what the retrospective intention and Brian's work would add or help with this. We get a lot of pre-verbal stuff, and we talk about that too. Do you want to talk about it, Brian? And then I'll tell you what we do with our retro intentions.
Yeah, well, my perspective on it is that you're feeling tired is because there's a resistance to the negative thought. And you have the negative thought because the positive thought comes from it, if that makes sense. It's an extension of the same process. So it's enough just to watch the process, but don't resist it, because you're trying to create something, an ideal, a positive, or from a negative, and they come from the same place. And it's an extension of that same place. So rather than resist it, which is tiring and not terribly fruitful, it is better just to watch the process itself, recognize that it's not you actually thinking this, but it is something from the past which is working through you, and which an emotion you have a trauma, something happens, whatever it is, becomes an emotion, and an emotion is interpreted by the brain as a thought. So that's what happens, and that's when you have the thought. But the thought is not you thinking it; it's that it's gone through that process. So what the brain then does is tries to be a logical thing, is do the opposite of that. There's an extension of it, and that's where the stress occurs. So rather than fight it or say it's a bad thing or whatever, you just observe that process, understand what is happening, and then see what happens. It will run out of energy, essentially. I shouldn't give you game away. That's but telling you the last page of the Poirot thriller. But the energy dissipates and the thought just collapses.
Now, and yes, and the other part of your question, Maureen, about the seed event and being pre-verbal, you can go back to, remember, it's about your power. So it doesn't mean that you have to relive exactly what happened. What you need to do is relive the emotion and change the sense of powerlessness. So let's say your mother didn't want to, and you're feeling that the trauma happened when you were 1 year old or whatever. Well, you can go back to that moment and be saying to her, even in baby thinking, but you can say in your grown-up voice, I deserve to be loved. You had me. I deserve your love. I deserve your attention. And so it's all about your power in every circumstance. And that's the sort of work we keep working on with people. We have many we have people even going back and doing retro intention in the womb, and it works. Okay, let's see. When is the next online Power of 8 group training starting? So two kinds of training coming up. October, all of October, the 5 Saturdays in October, I am doing Intention Essentials. That is an online course, and we'll be announcing that in early August. So it is 2 hours every Saturday in October. And Marilla said, any chance for a weekend workshop in London this year? Well, I'm doing a talk. I believe it's on the 17th or 18th of September with Conscious Life Expo at the London Hilton. And you can find out more. It'll soon be posted on my website under events. And, we keep talking about once they let us out from COVID, we keep talking about wanting to do weekend workshops live in London. So just sign up for my newsletter and you'll find out about what Brian and I are doing, and check our events page too. Okay, let's see. See if you can answer this one from Maria, Brian. Why are we supposed to be happy to come on Earth for a test of consciousness, since there are atrocities and torture that some humans choose to do? Please.
So why
should we be happy to come on Earth for a test of consciousness, since there are atrocities and torture that some humans choose to do?
Well, it's the Dostoevsky thing, wasn't it? How can there be a God when a child is mutilated? And it's the age-old question, and that itself is the point. If you want to get really deep about this for 3 seconds, let's do it. I believe God is a process, and God is a bringing into the world, and it's our function as conscious human beings, as opposed to unconscious ones who mutilate and maim, is to do that, is to bring that which is timeless and eternal into time and space. And that's what we have to do that. And that's our responsibility. And everything that happens is our responsibility. And so that's our function, is to bring this into the world. And the reason why we have to bring it into the world is because there are atrocities. So far from running away from atrocities, we have to accept that's the challenge. And we have to meet that challenge as conscious beings. We have to become more conscious and bring more consciousness into the world, bring God into the world.
Marie asks, in group intention, the effectiveness is based on not being blocked to experience due to psychological past. How is that resolved so the group success is maximized? Well, interestingly enough, Marie, when you go into group intention, whatever foibles you have don't seem to affect the outcome. So what we're talking about here with working on, time, becoming time light is an individual practice. In the group, the act of being in that group, this sense of oneness, and that's what I've studied this for many years. What's the secret sauce going on here? Aside from altruism, the other secret sauce is a sense of oneness. Entering that moment of oneness, we don't get to experience that in our lives, but that is our ordinary human experience. That's what we were supposed to be and supposed to experience. We are not alone. We never were alone. We were always part of a greater whole. We were always part of the field. But we don't get to feel that. We feel we're locked inside our own little lonely bodies. So when you're part of a Power of Eight group, you suddenly experience that sense of oneness. And that literally is an out-of-body experience for most people. They report all kinds of feelings, like being in a mystical state, like feeling like what A Course in Miracles called the holy instant. That, that moment of mystical awareness that, the sages and the mystics have always sought to achieve. We achieve it, even novices achieve it in an instant. It's amazing. But that whole entrainment of the group where, brainwaves are operating together and people are getting outside of themselves with the intention, happens very, very quickly. And people do enter into this altered state. And I think that is the key to the healing of both the senders and the receivers.
Altruism, forgiveness, compassion, empathy all break down space and time. And that's what's happening.
Okay, so someone else asked, where and when in Italy? It's going to be held, I believe it's the first week in October 2022. And the details are again on Global Journey's website. We're working with them again, and that's globalj.org. And if you check it, there's a lot of interest in that one as well as Costa Rica. So please check that out and contact them. You can see all of the details about it if you just go on to their website, globalj.org. You'll see the link below, and look for Italy, and then look for my information about our workshop. Okay. Val, how can we work on this if we cannot go to these retreats? Brian.
Well, I mean, I think, the retreat is one way. Just get more familiar with our work, read our books, stay in tune, stay in touch. We'll be doing more lessons, more work on this anyway. So it's not just going to be workshops. It's going to be a whole bunch of stuff we want to do more of. And it's taken us a while to get to that point of synthesis, really. And we've been playing around with this for a while now. So we feel really in a better place to bring this to you.
And one thing to know about our work is we try to provide work in all kinds of ways for people. So it's not simply retreats. It's not simply workshops. We have a whole coterie of things, everything from read our books to join a Power of Eight group for free, join intention experiments for free. Then you can come to talks, you can come to online things, you can come to retreats for the real in-depth work. So we have all kinds of levels of cost, including free, to actual retreats. So we have a big menu of possibilities for people so that everybody can benefit from our work. Here's a good one for you, Brian. Marianne says, do you have any idea how to heal trauma 7 generations back and forward? Our family, as many others, have war trauma involved in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, this is very, very interesting. I'm glad you asked the question, because you only sort of touched on the timeline work. But what is fascinating is the patterns go through the generations very often. And there have been studies into this, where from war, from concentration camps, right through to affecting people who weren't even born when these terrible things happen. So yes, there's a generational pattern which will emerge, not just a pattern in your life, but a generational pattern through a whole familial structure. These patterns will reoccur, which is an extraordinary thing, but it does. And how does it end? It ends by you becoming conscious. Someone in that family group has to become conscious. And very few people in the world are conscious. 99% of people will never be conscious. They'll be lived by the past. Their lives will be lived for them. And this is what I'm saying. This is our call today, is to say, who's going to step up and become conscious? Because in that very act of becoming conscious, the pattern collapses. And it collapses for all the generations. It's an extraordinary thing that happens. And it is the ultimate moment of forgiveness of all the sins done against you and which you have done. It's compassion for those who've sinned against you. It all happens in the twinkle of an eye, and it really does. And it becomes being conscious. So it's saying, are you ready? This is really that moment.
James has a really interesting question. How deeply do you believe the emotional traumatic memory energy needs to be investigated prior to using intentional healing to resolve it? Does it matter that our memory story we tell ourselves may be different from the event itself? No, in most cases, it is different from the event
totally
itself.
Different. Totally. That's the point of the untrue story.
Exactly.
Is utterly different. But I mean, what we're saying is, when you're intending and you are conscious, and it's a conscious thought, which is amplified by a group, and it's a wonderful thing, and extraordinary miracles happen. We've witnessed round about 5,000 of them off the top of the head, but it's an extraordinary number. But what we're saying now with the extension of the work is the other 23 hours. And that's
Yeah. And the thing is, what we found with retro-intentional healing is, no, you don't have to work on erasing this, this memory energy. If you become conscious of it and then go back and change your emotional response to it, that can heal you in an instant. We've seen it thousands of times. And it doesn't matter if the story is different. You don't have to get to the actual facts, because what's important is your sense of powerlessness. So you're taking back your power, and that's the healing that happens.
Yeah, I mean, a really important insight that you'll take away with you, and it is vital to understand, is that whatever your response to fix something comes from the problem. So people, for example, who have anger issues want to be rid of their anger, which is perfectly logical and understandable, but you have to also see that comes from the anger. Otherwise, you'd be trying to fix it. And that then becomes an extension of the problem itself. So what you have to do is to recognize these processes, recognize these patterns. And in that, plus the work that we suggest, it ends. That's the point. And I don't know, are we sort of talking around the houses here a bit? Are we answering this question?
No, we are answering.
We're answering this
that's
question.
Good. But the point is, it doesn't, people are used to listening or expecting that healing trauma takes a lot of talking cures. It talk out the problem, understand the problem, gnash over the problem, et cetera, et cetera. We don't find that. We find it's about powerlessness. It's about energy. It's about changing that energy. And we change the energy in several ways, whether it is going back with retro intention and all the time with a group. And that group energy is instantly healing. I have seen thousands of cases of people with all kinds of problems, whether it is health issues, relationship issues, financial issues, whatever you name it, healed in an instant with a group effect. It's remarkable. So it's about changing energy. It's not about changing what was.
And most therapies modify behavior, and this just utterly transforms it.
Yes, and Bryan's work is so good with anger, because the anger, the usual thing is count to 10. And
But I mean, just to quickly say, I mean, first off, as I said, there is the energy from the trauma. The energy gets translated into action or words or thoughts by the brain, and that becomes anger. But in seeing that process, what has actually happened? Well, there has been, the anger comes first, and the anger is down the line owned by somebody. So in other words, the anger creates you who is angry. Now, if you can see that process, then suddenly you disappear, because if you see the anger that creates you that is angry also disappears. And when that happens, anger collapses through the absurdity of no one being angry. Okay.
there you go. There you go.
Needs a bit more time, but
yeah,
you get
but this whole point is you don't need to that. Now, somebody anonymous, there's a waiting list for the March online event. So it is called Intention in and Out of Time. We're just taking names now of interested people for the March event. And you can go on my website. The link will be below in the chat. Check it out, and on Facebook. But if you can't find it, it's under courses. You'll see it, and just register your interest there. And TV says, this is a classic and great question. Thanks for asking it. How can we be prepared to deal with what may come in the future without creating more of what we don't want? For instance, does taking self-defense training draw the energy of personal attacks toward us? That is a common urban myth. The idea that you can't talk about anything negative. For instance, when I teach people how to deal with cancer, in a Power of 8 group, people will say, oh, we shouldn't mention cancer because we'll get more cancer. And my answer to that is, if you don't tell the universe what you want, how's it going to know? So if you don't tell your group what you want, how are they going to know? So no, when you are dealing with the future, what you want to do is tell the universe what you want, even if that's healing from something negative. So I think what you want to do is just design, and in our work, we have the group design your ideal future so that it starts coming to pass. And we're also, if it depends on self-defense training, it depends on why you're doing it, There's many, many good reasons for it. Okay, let's see. We've got just a few more minutes for questions. Which of Bryan's books would be best for a beginner?
Well, there's only one. and I think, you'll get as much out of it as you're ready to get out of it. So it's a beginner's book and it's an advanced book. It's anything you like. Depends where you are.
Okay. Leah, how do I heal the emotional abandonment? My kids suffered because of me. Well, we've done several things on that. One is healing you and your sense of guilt. We can do all of that with retro intention, because as Bryan said, at the time you did the best you could. And so we're healing, we would first heal you, but then we'd also have group intention to heal the feelings your children have suffered. if they give their, if they're adults and they have given their permission, we can do that with them too.
And it's also, this is an extraordinary miracle that happens, is that when you change, everything changes and your relationship with everybody changes. And it's so that is the healing as well.
Okay, and where should I put my attention and intention if I have consistent anxiety and negative thinking, but do not know where it started in my childhood? I mean, with that, I would talk about working with a Power of 8 group just to focus on healing that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have, I mean, when Lynn does the retroactive, it is something that you're aware of, and it works with that. But the sense of anxiety or whatever it might be, you don't necessarily need to know that seed moment. You can still work on that without knowing that. That, what Lynn is talking about, is one exercise. And there are many, many exercises. And it's enough to be aware of the emotion itself. To start seeing. And as I say, really what it is understanding the roadmap and seeing how these phantoms from the past are governing your life. And once you start seeing that, then the clarity begins. And then from there, but you don't have to know every last thing that happens. I mean, for example, with me, I mean, it's much of what happened to me happened before I really was very conscious of it. And so I didn't know the things that my mother explained, some of the things that happened, but I was not conscious of them. So, but I was left with a legacy of them, and that was enough to work with.
Mm-hmm. What about emotional hurt that isn't necessarily anger? And also, can this work help chronic pain? So, well, chronic pain we do with Power of 8 groups. Now, if you have power, let's distinguish this. If you have chronic pain that occurred right after, let's say, you got a divorce, then we would work on a retro intention around that divorce and then see what happens to the pain. If you just have chronic pain and you can't necessarily locate any moment that it started and identify a cause, then I just have the group work on healing your chronic pain. Now, Brian, Val, same person, said, what about emotional hurt that isn't necessarily anger?
Can I just go back to that first about pain?
Sure.
When it comes to health problems, the time model still stands. You have present time, you have past, which itself breaks into 3 different times, past times, we're going to that, and there's potential. And you must work through each of those in turn, and you must start with the present, because the most likely problem is going to be in present time. If you have chronic pain, look there first. You've got to explore all of that, any possible physical reasons, whatever it might be. If there really is nothing there, then turn to past time and find out traumas, trapped traumas, emotions, and problems that may be manifesting as chronic pain. And thirdly and lastly, it is the potential. What is blocking your life? What is stopping you from being the best that you can be? Because that's where potential sits. And then only then can you sort of determine where the chronic pain actually sits and why you have it. But you need to go through the 3 time models in sequence to understand chronic pain. What was the other question?
The other question was emotional hurt that isn't necessarily anger.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be anger. I mean, anger can be an expression of it, but no, it doesn't have to be anger. It could be. It is anything. You know, I mean, for me, it was depression, and understanding why that depression. I mean, it was just the overwhelming the sense of the past that I was drowning in the past, which was my depression. But no, it can be any emotion. It doesn't have to be anger at all.
Sure. And the point is that group work can heal anything. So when we're talking about chronic pain or emotional hurt, or any kind of, I think there was somebody else has said something about guilt. My guilt. Can I heal my guilt? You can heal after her son committed suicide. That's Sylvia. You can heal anything. and the extraordinary thing about these systems is that we've found people with no matter what in their lives can be healed. So that's about all the time we have, though, Brian. It really is zipped forward.
There you are.
So we just, thank you so much for listening. Let's announce it again. If you're interested in the Costa Rica retreat over New Year's into the light, where we're going to have an amazing celebration, we hope, with COVID enabling us to go. You can find that out on globalj.org, and the details are below that will be written in the chat. Our online course, Intention In and Out of Time, will be held in March, and you can put your name on the interested list. You go to my website, lynnmctaggart.com, and go under courses. The link is also below and in the chat. And we'll also be running another retreat, in-depth retreat in Italy, in Damanhur, that amazing underground cathedral, essentially. We've been working a lot in sacred spaces over the last year. So thank you so much for being part of this. Brian, thank you for talking about your amazing stuff. And a last comment from TV, who said, "I'm inspired by your story and your example of being a handsome, bold man. Gives me hope for my future dating life."
Oh my God, my wig fell off. What happened? What happened? Thanks, TV, for pointing that out. Okay. All right, everyone.
All right, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.